Thank you for joining us tonight as we turn our perspective to youth and youth empowerment. Our guest in studio is someone very familiar with that process. He is Andy King, the director of the Bronx Youth Empowerment Program. And today we're talking about how to empower youth, particularly here in the Bronx community, a very important event that's taking place in our borough Friday, May the 1st. We don't want you to miss it. So we'll turn to Andy now, director of the Bronx Youth Empowerment Program. And good to have you.
Good evening. Good to be here, Darren. Thank you for having me.
As we were, I said, Bronx Youth Empowerment Program, a program designed to really help engage youth in a positive way.
Yes.
From awareness to education and things of that nature. For those people who may not be so familiar, let's tell them a little bit about the Bronx Youth Empowerment Program first.
Okay, the Bronx Youth Empowerment Program is a youth program I started 4 years ago. We had Freddie was running for mayor, Fernando Ferrer was running for mayor, and after organizing as one of his leads for the North Bronx, I organized a Youth for Ferrer. We had about 60 youth that were coming out, after school on the weekends, and I had them all engaged. So after the campaign is over, we was like, well, what do we do now? So I said, well, I got to keep these young people engaged because they were thirsting for something to be a part of other than running back into the streets. So I said, let me come up with the idea of creating a program that will keep them civically engaged and community active. The Bronx Youth Empowerment Program has been created to help our young people develop to be the next leaders, the next generation of leaders. So I'm proud to say after 4 years of working and with the vision that I had 4 years ago with basically no funding, I mean, really we had no funding. We've had the community that come out to help, give in-kind contributions, their time, their service, and the young people have been so receptive to the information that they've been receiving from just community service people who will come to speak to them, whether they were teachers or social workers or even elected officials or even young people like you that, gave them an opportunity to come to the show and speak. So they've learned, they've prospered. The ages of the program, 13 to 18 years of age. So when you talk about the event that's happening this Friday, it's just the pinnacle of what they've been able to accomplish over the last 4 years and hosting their own forum that they're organizing to have an opportunity to have their own voice to share what's going on with them growing up in today's society.
Now, traditionally, young people, we see the activity, particularly this year in the election, this past election. You saw a lot more young people becoming politically active. What was the catalyst, do you feel, let's say for the full disclosure, Andy also worked with the campaign for Barack Obama as a grassroots organizer and a campaign organizer going out there to Pennsylvania. What was the difference in engaging young people to be a part of the political process this time around, as opposed to years past where we saw fledgling numbers?
Then they were looking for something to be a part of. This time they believe in everything that they're a part of. It's a difference. I mean, both of them are pluses, but when you believe, you have the commitment and the energy to always show up and then bring your own ideas. I applaud the young people because as we went out and organized, you can give somebody a task and they followed it through. Back home in our communities, a lot of times when we look to organize our young people, there's so many different distractions or so many different options, whether they're good or bad, that take them away from what they actually should be spending time in. A lot of our young people tend to waste time doing things that aren't profitable to move them to the next level. So when you talk about this election cycle with President Barack Obama, the energy of believing that they can, and they did. So that's the difference between now and then.
Youth have a voice. You're trying to get the youth a voice on Friday, May the 1st. It will be called Youth Speak, and that's going to be taking place right here in the borough of the Bronx. Let's talk about this event in particular. What can we expect when we walk through the doors? We know young people will be at the helm and speaking out.
Oh, yes, they will. They have been organizing this event for the last couple of months. And what the layout is, it's going to be held at Richard Green in the auditorium, where there's a number of about 11 different schools from the Bronx community that are coming together to have a youth speak out. And there's a student panel that's going to address an adult panel, which today consists of the New York State Assembly, which is called Hasty, the New York Senate, which is Senator Ruth Hassel Thompson. We have the NYPD, who will also be there, the commanding officer, Dietrich, always, his name gets me from time. He's being the Division of Youth and Family Services, and we have a number of clergy, and then not to mention we have your own Bronxer and WBLS, Dr. Bob Lee is one of the panel members. And we changed it up a little bit by adding some of community activists such as Michael X, who will be on the board and on the panel, and one of the parent coordinators in the Bronx that will be participating in that. And to top it off, kids are blessed to have for their keynote speaker the new Bronx Borough President, Ruben Diaz Jr.
So Ruben Diaz Jr., the new Bronx Borough President, as we said, will be there, and he'll be speaking as well. When these kids are engaged in the process of talking and sharing, what are some of the things that they really want to address at the forefront that maybe we don't pay attention to?
Safety. One of the issues they complain about is having been able to walk down their communities without being accosted by each other, or just having positive relationship with officers. Something that we've been able to establish within the Youth Empowerment Program from the first Youth Speaks that we had, and after the shooting of Sean Bell, that we partnered up with the 47th Precinct and was able to engage in regular meetings called Connections, which helped young people understand the do's and don'ts and understanding how police. So this way the policing turns into servicing and relationships are built, so we don't have confrontations as opposed to positive relations with the police officers. Another thing that's an issue that's come to the forefront is the education structure of learning what they're learning or what they're not learning in school. One of the young people had a conversation with me yesterday talking about the level of learning, that the information that they're learning. Their highest student, who may highest level student in their class, may compare it to a school that's allegedly better than them or at a higher level. So they're saying, if you're teaching us information that we can't even pass a test, why are you teaching us this? We can't even go out and be productive. One of the issues they have is the SATs. Because in a lot of people have conversations about the SATs because the material that our students in the class are being tested on, they don't use the words that you see in the vocabulary section. If you're not taught certain sentence structure or you're not taught certain vocabulary, how can I be tested on something I've never been taught? So it's kind of a biased test, and these are some of the questions that some of the juniors and the seniors, because they take the PSA test, have been complaining about in the classroom. So this is what they're going to be presented to the Department of Ed and what can be done differently to help them in what they're being taught in the classroom.
Most of the time we hear youth is usually they're being spoken to. This time they're taking the initiative and speaking out. How vocal have they been in times past when it comes to certain issues? Because we always hear, well, youth are shy, they really don't speak too much. But these youth, and I can say because I've had a couple of them here, they're very well spoken.
Yes.
And they address the issue.
Yes, what we do in our weekly sessions is not only just current events, but we engage them by taking them to community board meetings. They've been to CEC meetings. They've gone to Albany to lobby their elected officials. Just during this last budget crisis, they were engaged in a Valentine's Day card letter writing campaign. And at the end of the day, they went up to Albany. They went to the Senate Majority Leader, Malcolm Smith, went to his office and told him, hey, save our education, and handed him 5,000 signed cards saying, we need for you to do the right thing for us this budget to save education. And obviously it had an impact because education didn't take hard a hit. You know, they didn't increase the spending, but they didn't really decrease the spending in education. So the message was heard, and I applaud them for their efforts, as I applaud all the other unions that were engaged in making sure this budget made sense.
I want to take a quick break with Andy King. He's our guest here in studio. We're going to come back and talk a little bit more about the Bronx Youth Empowerment Program, the Youth Speaks program, taking place on Friday, May the 1st, right here in the borough of the Bronx. And then we'll also tell you what Andy King is doing these days as well. In addition to the youth speaking out, so is he. We'll tell you more when we return.